Hey, good morning, friends. Hello, hello. Good morning, everybody. How are you? Welcome, welcome. Hello, hello. Good morning, all. How are you? Hello, friends. Glad you're finding your way. Hey, good morning. Jim Pereira, how are you this morning? Great to see you. Glad you're here. Jamie, good morning, good morning. Hope you're well and doing well. John, good to see you. Glad you're here too. How are you all? So glad that you are here. Hey, Sharon. How are you this morning? I hope you're well. Good morning, Priscilla. Hope that things in Ohio are well. Hope you're doing well and feeling well. It is a gloriously beautiful day here. It is probably, I think, the first day we might see the actual 70s and the sun to break out and things to truly find their way from the kind of dismalness of the winter into the beauty of spring. So glad you are with us this morning. I see a few more people coming in. We'll get going here. How are you? If you're with us this morning, say hi. Love to see you. I see that. Good morning. Good morning. Hey, Cecile. Good to see you. Kristen's been a Kristen's been a help to us, working on some stuff. So I hope you are well too. Good morning, everybody. I see a few more people coming along, and we'll get going here in a sec. So hope you're doing well. So my dashboard, Facebook in its way of making adjustments, just changed my whole dashboard around this morning. So if I look a little disoriented, it's only because I am. So hope you're so glad everybody's here, and hope you're having a good morning. All right, let's let's get going this morning. It is such a joy that we might begin another week here. Yesterday was Patriots Day, and today we are on 420. Yeah, dog. So depending on where you are and what that means, different things to different people. But I am glad to be here with you this morning. So so I want to start with this and with this text from Matthew, and that it's really this. I think in many ways this. Uh, I think sometimes we've kind of thrown this text away a little too soon because we thought that we think we know what it means, and I think this is true of a lot of stuff in Jesus' teaching. So this is from the seventh chapter of Matthew, which is a humdinger if you ever get a chance, if you ever want to read it. Uh, so and so Jesus is talking about, like, how do we know what's good and bad? Like, how do we know the good teachers from the bad teachers? How do we know the good things from the bad things? And he says this, which we may well have heard before. He says, "You will know them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorns or figs from thistles? In the same way, every good tree bears good fruit, and every bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. And thus you will know them by their fruits." Now we're good morning, Linda. Good morning, Robin. Good morning from Fruit Country. Yes, if you don't know, in that Robin lives in the middle of the cherry capital of the planet. So if you have delicious cherries, they might well come from some proximity near Robin. And so, good morning, Donna. Glad you're here. This whole notion of fruit and bearing fruit, that we think about it as this. What is this? Is this a good teacher or a bad teacher? Is this a good thing to listen to or a bad thing to listen to? And what it produces is whether it's how we understand it as good or not. Now, I want you to consider this not just to, like, some, whether, as a way of kind of discerning between your favorite pastor, like whether or not, this preacher is a good preacher or this person is a good person. But I want us to think for just a moment of taking this on a little bit inner journey to us, of understanding just a little bit more on this day that the garden that is within us and within our soul, and the thistles that exist within us that we can cultivate, and the fruit and the beauty and the joy that we too can also cultivate. That in the great lines of Alexander Solzhenitsyn, that heaven and hell are spread about the earth, and that because the dividing line is down the center of the human heart. We like to project a lot of Jesus' teachings out into the world and say, oh, this is how we discern between this person and that person, or these good things and that good things. But I think also there's a way in which we take those in and we say, what are the thistles of my life that are nothing but thorns and bramble? And what are the things that, if I cultivate, will bring goodness into my days? And all of this, I think, leads us right into the problem of pain. It leads right, and which none of us have been particularly immune from over the past year. None of us are immune from it anyway. We are all, in friends, born for struggle. We are born for it. There's something that is trying to grow out of us and through us. There's a spirit that comes into us, and that requires us to struggle. All you can do is watch a baby for a little while, and there's a constant reach for something just outside of their craft, something just a little shinier, a constant desire to try and stand up or waddle or wiggle, or that there is this way in which we're born kind of struggling against the world, whether it's gravity or whatever. And it reminds me of the story that I think helps us understand this a little bit better. And it's the story of a man who is called to push on a rock. There's this rock in the middle of the river, and it's damming things up. That the river is moving around the rock, but it is the central obstruction of the flow of water in this thing. And he's called to go and push on the rock. God calls him as he stands looking at the scene, and God calls him, go and push on the rock. And so the man, faithful and dutiful, goes out and begins to push against the rock. And he gives it all that he can in that day. And the next day he wakes up with the same thing up on his heart, and he pushes against the rock. And yet the rock doesn't budge. And again he goes back, and day in and day out he pushes against the rock. And yet the rock does not move. And after months and years of struggle, he pushes against the rock and finally falls to his knees and said, Lord, I have been faithful at pushing on the rock, but yet it has never moved. Nothing has changed. The river flows in the same way. It backs up in the same way. The swamp is created in the same way. All this task that you gave me to do has been for naught. And at that point, the Spirit comes upon him, and says, you think that I called you to move the rock, but I never called you to move the rock. I called you to push on the rock, to push against the things that would obstruct us, to push against the movement and the difficulty of the world. If God wanted things in our lives solved, if God wanted all of the world solved, the world would be solved. And that's a hard reality in the sense of the creation as we know it, and the suffering and the difficulties and the injustices that we all encounter in the course of our days. But when God comes to this man and says, now look at you, though. Look at you. You have shown up every day. You have learned and been created and been transformed into one with shoulders of strength and power, ones with legs that are bristling with muscles, one with a determination and a heart that will move, that seeks to move the unmovable, that you, in all of your pushing and all of your efforting and all of your struggling, has come to be transformed. Not to move the rock, but to become that which you were called to be. The problem of pain in our lives, the problem of suffering, the things that we are born for and in and about, are things that we're called to yes, struggle with. Yes, work against. Yes. But the notion that we would prune back all of the thistles, that we would move back all of the thorns, that we might never be pricked by the pain of the world, well, that's not real. But our call is to struggle against the rock, even though the rock might never actually move. Philip Yancey, one of the great Christian writers, he was that it's been this whole notion of pain and suffering has been a part of his whole life. It's been one of the core kind of calls of his life to and deal with. And he watched his father suffer with polio as a young boy. He watched many through the course of his ministry suffer and in pain. And then in 2007, he ends up in an automobile accident with his neck broken. And the doctor comes in and says, we're taking some x-rays, we're taking some examination, but if your broken neck has punctured your artery, there's nothing we're going to be able to do about it, and it means you will only live for a few minutes. We're doing all we can. And so they all rush from the room to look at to look at and examine the images, and Yancey is left there on the table by himself, his neck broken, having spent his life wrestling with this question of pain, with this question of suffering, with this question of difficulty. And he says this, I had mere minutes to live, or at least that's what I thought. And I could only comprehend three questions. No, three questions that kept churning in my head. He says, who do I love? What have I done with my life? And am I ready for whatever is next? He said, of course, I could have been aligning my life with those three questions the whole time. But it was the pain and the suffering and the difficulty of that day that stripped away all of the extraneous things of his life, all of the little lies, the little thistles, the little brambles that he had caught himself up into the course of the days. And it bore him fruit. It bore him truth and goodness in his life that could, he suggests, even could come in no other way. C.S. Lewis writes in The Problem of Pain, and Lewis is very humble in this book. He takes on the question of pain, but he takes it on and he says, I was trying to elucidate. I was trying to throw out how this works in the biblical framework of how God suggests this is, but I am insufficient to actually be able to articulate it. So he comes at this from this incredibly humble place, and yet he whispers these great words. He writes these great words. He says, God whispers to us in our pleasures. God speaks to us in our conscience, but God shouts to us in our pain. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Now, I don't think it's only that. And if it were only that, it would be a paltry thing. He writes a whole book, and this is just one quote. So, sometimes he gets a little bad rap for that. But I do believe he touches on one of the most powerful things about what we are to do, what we are to cultivate in our lives. That we all want on this 420 to just spark up a doobie. If you don't know what 420 is about, 420 is the traditional day of marijuana smokers. So then so cheers to you. That in this one of the great tasks of the drug is to be able to escape us from pain. But with the cross, and what Christ, and what Lewis, and what Yancey, and what all the saints, and what all of the New Testament scholars say, is another point that Yancey makes, is that what all of the New Testament scholars makes is that they don't give us the why behind all the pains. They don't tell us why there's thistles, both in the world and in our hearts. They don't tell us why there is, but what they do tell us is that at the heart of it, is our bringing into life, our joy in being, at the very core of ourselves, a response to God, a response to the one who makes us, a response to one who calls us into the world and has within us both thistles and fruit to contend with. How we respond becomes the very why. So if you're asking yourself those questions these days, and I know a lot of people are, why did this happen? Why are we suffering? Why this? Why that? It's my contention, and I think it's with so many others, that we come to that part of the why is in the fruit that we will bear with the struggle that we are given. Well, with the strength we will gain from the rock that we are called to push on. Not from the Christianity is not a self-help seminar about us being more efficient and more able and just being more productive in the world and making sure that the greatest change. For all of the social justice movement in the church, and it has brought wonderful things in terms of the movement against slavery, movement against great injustices. It also runs a risk. It also runs a risk of us understanding that within us are thistles and fruits. And we are cultivators of one and strugglers against others. And that in the struggle, in the pain, and in the hurt of the world is God shouting to us through his megaphone to rouse us into asking those beautiful questions that Aunt Yancy asks about who do I love? What have I done with my life? And am I ready for what is next? Friends, there's love and there's life and there's beauty in the fruits of the world. And there is strength and courage and wisdom to be gained in the struggling against the thistles and the thorns. It's my hope that you will hold in response today the beautiful questions, the glorious wonder of what it is next to come, of what it is to have a creation, not that it will be okay by and by, but a creation that will transform as a cherry blossom turns into a cherry. Anybody ever think about that transformation? Here's this flower. It's a flower. I mean, it's lovely and all, but it's just a flower that will bear into this beautiful and delicious fruit that when it touches our lips, our very taste buds go wild, and it's electric right down to depending on how sour it is, it can be really electric right down to the tips of our fingers. Friends, you're struggling, you're enduring, you're overcoming. Even if you are not moved that rock in your river one bit, is that transformation of blossom to fruit? Is that transformation from that beautiful thing you are doing to the strength and the nourishment of the world and of your soul and of all the souls that you will encounter in the course of your living? I hope, friends, in these days that you will think on this, on these fruits and thistles, on these rocks that you are pushing on that seem to not move at all, and understand that God is doing great things with them and in them, and that in the heart of our struggling, in the heart of our difficulty, is God reaching out and calling to us to give us the broad shoulders of faith and the legs with the endurance to run the race. All right, friends, that's my hope for you today, is that you'll take courage in your struggles and know that you are not alone, and that they are not nearly as outside of you as so often they are within our hearts and within our minds. Go forward today and know God's grace and God's beauty for you. It's my hope for you, each one of you. I'm so thankful you're here today. I'm so thankful you're a part of this journey and you're a part of our 1111 family here. I will continue to pray for each of you and all of the days. Oh, and by virtue of that, last week we were praying for Ben Wilcox, who was in hospital. He'd been in and out of the ICU, and actually he is home. Yeah, he went home yesterday, and so it is a great triumph and beauty in that he may be restored to wellness. All right, friends, thank you so much for being with us today. Peace and grace to you all.